This is a podcast by WellHouse Church, where certain things are fixed, the essentials of faith, and the best beer is served on tap, while everything else is just a matter of perspective. What is crackin' beer lovers?
Hey, hey, hey.
We back again
For some mo beer
with some more beer.
and some mo theology.
Mo beer, mo theology.
Oh, t-shirt.
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 Yep.
M-O apostrophe
Beer.
beer.
M-O apostrophe theology.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We own it.
We're idiots.
The back of the shirt can say, "We want some mo."
Just like a pitcher of beer that's like
That's
empty
right.
and like turned over on its
That's
side.
right. Yep.
Yeah, we want some mo.
We want some
love
mo.
I love it. We're also idiots, but
We are, but that's what
okay.
makes it fun.
yeah. Anyways, we wrapped up the Bible last week. What is the Bible? We wrapped that up.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about that in a minute. You wanna? I really want to get into this.
You talk about your beer
I
because
really wanna
even
get into
me,
this.
I'm excited about your beer.
I'm so excited for this beer.
Did you get these at our local HEB?
I did.
I'm gonna go pick one up because
You
I
should.
really want to try it.
Oh, the marketing on this. I don't even care.
It could taste terrible, and I'm
It
probably
could
gonna still
taste-
drink it.
It could taste like straight.
Doo-doo.
boo hockey.
Yeah, yeah.
It could just be awful, but the marketing on this is
Just
fantastic.
yeah, just so good.
and it's so fitting for us.
Yep.
The name of this beer.
Wait, hang on. So go through who's the brewing company?
Epic Brewing.
Epic Brewing, okay, and what kind of beer is it? Because that if it were a different style of beer,
Yeah, it may not be as
wouldn't
funny.
be- yeah,
It is a coffee stout.
okay. And now name the beer.
Well, it's a coffee stout with cacao.
Cacao, yeah.
Yeah, but still. It's called the Son of a Baptist.
Yeah, it's called the SOB, the Son of a
The
Baptist.
Son of a Baptist.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely could not love it more.
The marketing is fantastic. I
It's
really
superb.
hope that it tastes good.
Yeah.
And I'm expecting it to taste good.
Yeah.
But Son of a Baptist. That's going to be my new thing. Like I
You're
stub
gonna
my
say
toe.
it? Oh
I'm going to
my
stub my
gosh.
toe. Son of a Baptist.
You're that guy. You're that guy. Yeah, you would. No, I do think their marketing is superb.
It's fantastic. It says, hops are not just hops, and coffee isn't just coffee. We've sought out creative and passionate coffee roasters from around the world to explore the innovative flavors of the coffee they roast. Look on the bottom of the can to see whose coffee is featured for more information, blah, 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 blah. From Denver, which is cool. I want to remove this so I can see whose coffee it is, but it's not coming off. 8%.
Yeah, 8% ABV.
Yeah, not much else to say.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not until we get into it. And Clayton once again bought beer for the podcast and rewarded me, said I've been good. Once again, our friends over at Spindle Tap Brewery have put out what they call the Houston Haze IPA.
Yo, HEB, you got to stop putting these things on so much.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. And it's 7% ABV. But once again, as we've talked about for the last couple of weeks in the hophead world, is called the Houston Haze. Once again, a reference to the
marijuana.
Yeah, the familial relationship between hops and cannabis.
Yeah.
They are cousins of the same plant.
It's a cousin of the weeds.
It's a cousin of the weeds. So, if you ever see those kinds of things, just know what your brewery is communicating to you.
And for those of you that are worried, there is not weed.
Yeah, there's
in
no
that
weed
can.
in it. Yeah, there's no weed in it.
It's not going to get you high.
No, it won't.
You drink enough of them, you're going to feel something.
Yeah, but you won't feel high.
It's just, it won't be a cannabis high.
Yeah. All right, let's do this thing.
Let's do it.
Ready? Cheers.
Cheers, bud.
Ooh.
Good head. Ooh.
Oh, yeah. And mine's much more malty than I would have expected.
Really?
Yeah. You would like mine.
Mine is black.
Well, it's a coffee stout, but
I was not expecting that
to be like straight black.
And it is not as carbonated as I would expect.
It is a stout. Typically, they are less carbonated.
Typically, they are, but like
it's even under the threshold.
Yeah, I'm used to the Guinness kind of
heavy head, heavy carb. Yeah.
But it's lighter.
Yeah.
I'm actually really surprised at how light it is. You get coffee right up front, and then that coffee kind of carries. You get a hint of the malt.
Yeah.
Like mid palate, and then it finishes on that cacao.
Yeah. Pretty complex.
Yeah.
Got a lot of depth.
Yeah.
Nice.
The mid palate is missing a little bit. But no, fantastic.
Oh, by the way, Dad wants you to save one sip of that for him.
Okay. I will attempt.
Yeah. I feel you. All right. So.
Delish.
Good. All right. So, as the title suggests, we're talking about narrative theology. If you are like most people that came from the tradition that we came from, you will have never heard of this.
Yeah. We were having dinner at the trailer. What was this? I don't know.
A couple months ago.
Couple months. Yeah, it was back in February.
Yeah.
And we were just talking. And this is what me and Cullen do when we hang out. We talk theology.
That's what I do with most people that I hang out with. It comes with the territory of being a pastor.
We were just talking theology, and he was like, "Yeah, I think I'm pretty much given over to this like idea of narrative theology." And I was like,
"What's that?"
What?
Yeah, that's exactly how that went down.
What?
Yeah.
And so that is what took up the rest of our time hanging out. Is you detailing out narrative theology for me.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do that for y'all.
Yeah. So I didn't want to do a series on what is the Bible without telling you how to read the Bible.
Yeah.
And Clayton had made this comment. I can't remember what podcast it was on.
It was on A Closer Look.
Okay. But he said that the Bible is a guidebook for you to participate in godness. Yes, that thing, right? Yes, 100,000% yes. That is what the Bible is.
I don't care where you fall on the issue of inerrancy, whatever. Inerrancy, infallibility, whatever. Have your opinions, do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care where you fall soteriologically.
Yep.
Have your opinions, do your thing.
Yep.
If we can all come back to that point about the Bible, though.
Yep.
That it helps us, that it's a guidebook to help us participate in godness. I'm cool.
Yep.
And now how do we get there? How do we read it as a guidebook to participate in godness?
Yeah, so that's the deal. So this is a theology podcast, so we get to be a little bit more in tune with our theology here. Growing up, and as the church developed out of the Reformation, everything was about reason and objective truth. And that led us to the ultimate place of a doctrine of inerrancy. That we must have the ultimate form of objective truth, and we're going to say that's the Bible. And so because it's the ultimate form of objective truth, it must also be perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so because of that, most of our theology came from the Bible. Now, that's not 100% true because the omnis, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, those didn't... Yeah, omnipotent, no, omnipotent. You are? That's a Friends reference for any of you guys. Joey, if you were omnipotent, I'm not omnipotent.
No. Joey, if you were omnipotent for a day, what would you do? Probably
kill myself. That's what he says.
And then Ross goes, Joey, omnipotent. Oh, you are?
Yeah. So funny. So funny. No, so the omnis actually come from a first century patristic author. They're not actually there. I mean, we do have some places where the text says that God is all powerful.
Right.
But it doesn't say he's everywhere explicitly, and it doesn't say that he knows everything.
So, now, to be fair, if he is all powerful, couldn't he also make himself omniscient and
don't make me do it. Don't make me hit you with it. I'm gonna hit you with Augustine.
Well, of course, like that's always like a valid go-to point when you're talking about this.
Yeah,
like,
is God so powerful that he can create a rock so big that he can't pick it up?
And the answer to that is yes.
Well, it's like, but
you can't answer that any other way.
Yeah, you can't.
Right? It's
that's
a trap.
That's the deal. It's a trap because it's supposed to be a trap. Because when we say God is all powerful, we're talking about an infinite God in finite terms that we actually can't understand.
It is a trap.
Yes.
You cannot do anything with that statement. And I have used that to trap people.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah. And I always hate the guys that come back like, line trying to explain a cube. And I'm like, that's not the point.
Yeah, no, the point is for you to think differently about it.
Yeah.
But so what happens in this is that most of our theology ends up coming from the Bible, and specifically with this idea of objective truth, we get systematic theology.
Yes.
I understand that we may have systematic theologians that listen to the podcast.
Most of the people that listen to this are probably subscribing to a systematic theology of something.
Yes, I would think so. But I'm saying that I'm pretty sure we have at least one listener that is a professor of systematic theology at a university.
Oh. Hey, welcome.
Yeah. So,
hope you enjoy.
Systematic theology is absolutely necessary.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not the end-all, be-all. And here's the deal. The Bible, as we've talked about, it's a lot of different genres.
Yeah.
You got narrative, you got poetry, you got wisdom, you got gospel, you got letters, you got prophets. I mean, you got all this stuff. What do you do with it? We got in trouble prior to the Reformation because in the Psalms, it says that the earth stands still, that it does not move.
Right.
Well, when Copernicus and Galileo are debunking that, the church now has a massive problem on their shoulders.
Well, yeah, we're not going to get into that.
So, once again, how they do it, they fight power, and they oppress them, all this kind of stuff. But anyways, what happens is we get to a point where somebody says, this is not the way to read the Bible.
Yeah.
There's got to be a different way. And it is out of the post-liberal movement. So it's past Schleiermacher and liberalism, Protestant liberalism. It's past Paul Tillich, all those kinds of guys. And it actually moves into post-liberal. And what arises is something called narrative theology. And basically the premise is, hey, we're tired of doing theology from objective truth.
Yeah.
Let's move back towards Romanticism. Let's move back towards postmodernity. Let's move towards relativism. And when you move toward relativism, you have the opportunity, as we have done, to say, hey, when I read the narrative, this doesn't fit the character of God.
Yep.
That's a foundational piece of narrative theology. A second foundational piece of narrative theology is that you do theology from narrative. This was always a huge complaint that I had with my tradition, the Baptists. We would go to Paul to see what he had to say about Jesus. And we'd forget that Jesus told us what Jesus had to say about Jesus.
Well, and not even that, right? Like, even deeper, it goes into how we read it. Like, we don't read it as stories. We don't read it as letters, right?
Correct.
We read it dissecting every word.
Well, we read it as if the Bible is its own genre.
Right.
Instead of saying the Bible is composed of many genres.
Yeah. Comprised of several different stories and narratives, right?
Yes.
We don't appreciate it for the narratives that are there.
And
right?
that's the deal. When you're going for objective truth to be the foundation or foundationalism of your theology, you're going to struggle pulling theological truths out of narrative. Mm-hmm. You need them from epistles.
Yep.
You need them from places where it's dictated or declared.
Well, and also in this same vein as well, like even with the epistles, we have to remember that it was not written for us or to us, right?
Yeah,
it was written
for us, not to us.
Yeah.
We're reading somebody else's mail.
We say that all the time.
Yep.
Right? And in the same vein, like that's still true here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we get the idea.
Yes. And so what narrative theology has done is said, hey, let's return to some relativism that we had in Romanticism. Let's turn back to this. Let's get away from objective truth. Let's get away from foundationalism. And let's do our theology from the narrative of Scripture.
Yeah.
Now, that's narrative theology. We're going to spend a little bit of time in the coming weeks continuing to talk about narrative theology. But one of the guys that I love about the way that he is communicating and doing post-liberal theology as well as narrative theology is Stanley Hauerwas. Stanley Hauerwas was a longtime professor of ethics at Duke University. And if you know theology, you know Stanley because he is famous for cursing in his talks. He's just polarizing. I mean, he cusses in all of his talks.
I love it.
It's very funny. But one thing I love about Stanley is Stanley says that narrative theology must be grounded in community because the faith community must teach you how to read the narrative.
Ooh, that's gold.
Yes. And so narrative theology is not a loophole to get out of the things we don't want to see in the text.
Right.
Which I think is what a lot of people think it is. It's actually not that at all. It's a different way of reading the text and coming to theological truths from the text. But this way, it's not objective. Yeah. It's relative and grounded in the community, which I love because it makes space for feminist theology. It makes space for black theology. Yeah. It makes space for abolitionists. It makes space for a lot of oppressed types of theology where certain people groups or worldviews or viewpoints come to the text with a different realization than white evangelicals.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Because we control the narrative.
We do. But also what it does is it makes space for other traditions, right? Like
it does.
We can sit down with a table of every tradition represented in America.
Yes.
And the narrative theologians are going to be like, yeah, like you're probably right, like in your own respect. Like you might be right. Like
I'll never forget, I had a professor at HBU for undergrad. His name was Fu Lu. Can't remember where he's from. Asian descent of somewhere. I think he's Vietnamese. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But he wrote a book, and I remember he met with my friend Josh Hilburn at Gather Houston. Josh is a church planner in Houston as well. And Fu was talking about his new book. And I remember hearing Fu speak, and he was talking about the same Jesus that I was talking about. He was talking about the same Bible I was talking about. But he had a very different view of who that Jesus and who that God was, because he was an Asian immigrant. And so when he read in the Bible to care for the immigrant, that mattered. That wasn't something that he was able to overlook.
Yeah.
And then he looked around and saw that most churches weren't doing that. In fact, in Houston, we fight against immigrants.
Yeah.
And so Fu wrote a book about this whole idea, and it was really revealing for me, really telling for me that, like, hey, the way that I read Jesus in the narrative, or the way you read Jesus in the narrative, the way our dad, our board members, whoever, any person, the way Paul Tillich, any person, the way you read God in the narrative, just because you see it different than me doesn't mean you're wrong.
Yeah.
And narrative theology allows space for that continuity in the interpretation.
It allows space for experience.
It allows space, well, not only experience, but for voice.
Right.
If you remember on Let's Talk, you can go back and find it. It's with my friend Adam Cheney. When we announced our partnership with Elijah Rising, shout out to Elijah Rising with our candles. When we announced our partnership with Elijah Rising, we came to a place where we said that we weren't going to just sit back and watch injustice happen, that we were going to participate. And one thing that Adam said in that podcast that I have never forgotten and will never forget is that if you want to oppress someone, the first thing you do is take away their voice. Narrative theology gives a voice back to people that we took it from.
Remember that historically, the average Joe Blow that goes to church on Sunday mornings never had a voice.
Correct.
Historically, going deep in history, they weren't even allowed to read the Bible.
Yeah.
So, what narrative theology is doing is putting a Bible in everyone's hands and saying your voice, your opinion matters.
Yes, that's exactly what it's doing. And it makes space. And that's the deal. It doesn't say that the Bible's not filled with truth.
Yeah.
It is saying that it's not objective truth. Now, there are statements that we would say are objective.
Sure. The 10 Commandments.
Yes. But what it says is that, and I'm sure I'm going to upset some people when I say this, but truth is contextualized. And we see this in our own world right now. I can tell you what happened to me, and it can be my thing. And they go, and a common response is, well, I haven't found that to be true. Yeah. Because truth is contextualized, as is the truth of Scripture. An immigrant can read the same text as me, a person of privilege, and get two different things.
Yep.
A person, a white evangelical, can read Genesis 19 and take a Jude interpretation that it's their sin of sexual immorality, rather than one of Ezekiel, that it's their lack of hospitality. The Bible and the interpretation is always contextualized, and that's what narrative theology makes space for.